because that's about all I know. But I believe Somalia was on that list of...
It probably was, because usually when lists are made for country that have countries that where someone says they need to be invaded, usually what the central feature is a very weak central government, where it provides a great environment for unsavory elements to introduce themselves and basically take over the country.
Yeah.
For me personally, I don't think invading them is really the the correct recourse, because when it really comes down to it, you know, these movements like an Al-Qaeda, whatever it is, they're not going to gain any footing if the population has something to lose. Like, these organizations have something to offer a vast amount of people that makes recruiting possible. And the other thing they have is they have ability to identify a scapegoat that the population can look at and say, yes, it is this country or this person's fault that we are in the situation that we're in. So, you know, even when you look at how Afghanistan got to be radicalized or how Pakistan did, it's because the Saudis, who practice Wahhabi Islam, and it's a very extremist sect of Islam that's not indicative of what Islam is as a whole, basically started building schools and educating children. And my question is, why didn't we have that foresight that this backwards country of Saudi Arabia had to just start building schools? It is so cheap to do that. And, you know, and you can make a moderate country that has, you know, the ability to critically think and innovate, make its own economy.
Because that's not what we're interested in. And I want to back up a little bit, and I'm going to inject a little bit of my own personality into this, or my own personal beliefs, and you know, which is great, which is good. And I want to back up a little bit in how I see things, which we've got the Democrat arm of our duopoly, right? It's fingers in the pie right now.
Yep.
Okay? So the Democrat arm of this dirty bird is in your mama. You know what I mean? And so they're controlling this fucking sock puppet right now. And so it's not really in that, you know, the guys, this illusion of choice, or, you know, they're the one controlling this deal, and it's not really their style to invade. Okay, so they can do these, and especially now, right, with these unmanned drones, they can go in and, say, Somalia, for example, and take out key strategic targets, and then create basically unrest and destabilize these areas, and then they just prop up something within the country that is basically our little puppet. You know what I mean? So we're not really invading, yet we destroy whatever it is we need to destroy to destabilize the region so that our guy on the inside can take control of the area. I mean, do you buy that?
Oh, well, historically, I don't think what you're saying is untrue, but we've also had instances where we've put someone in on our own and it ended up being better for the country.
Okay.
For example, if you look at post-World War II, you know, Germany wouldn't be where it was today if it wasn't for what we did for them there. Same goes for Japan.
Yeah, they might be better off, but that wasn't necessarily why we did what we did or what we had in mind either. You know what I mean? So it's not like thanks to us that happened either.
Well, I mean, we did have a big part. Every other country was completely bankrupt, including England. And England, in fact, still owes us tons of money for our helping rebuild. But I'll tell you what, Rob, the one thing that really drives me crazy is we look at a country like Germany and Japan, and they're still afforded many of the things that we consider civil rights, freedoms, whatever you want to call them. But the one thing that we did there is we made sure that everyone had things like healthcare and a right to an education, because the people who had their hand in that realized that that is the anchor of a stable society.
Yeah.
But despite that, we never did that here, and that's what blows my mind.
Yeah, and that was the second Bill of Rights that all the countries involved in World War II adopted that we never did, right?
Right. I mean, it was
literally a second Bill of Rights.
Yeah, it was Roosevelt's Bill of Rights, and he had actually, you know, Michael Moore found a recording of that, which was amazing, that he showed in his last movie that I can't remember the name. Oh, Capitalism, a Love Story. But, you know, Roosevelt wanted that to be, you know, bill of the 19 through 20 if we were to look at a Bill of Rights, even though it would have ended up being whatever 28 through 38 at the time. But at the same time, it just blows my mind that I don't understand why we don't have those principles for ourselves when at one point in the not-so-far history we set that as the standard for the countries that we were rebuilding that were once our enemies.
So, going back to something that I was, starting to get to, and one thing I also need to, what's that?
Sorry about my tangents.
No, it's fine. And actually, I was just about to say, one thing I need to work on is my affirmations, because I really suck at that. Like, people will go off and they'll say something and it'll be good, and then I'll just kind of make this awkward segue into what I was getting at before, and I need to work on that. So I just don't know what to say. With it, I feel if I'm like, yeah, good point, that was great, I'll just sound disingenuous. So I just like, okay. But anyway,
would this be a good time to take a little jab at you for something you put on Facebook today?
Yeah, absolutely. Give it to me.
Voting for Ron Paul would be the antithesis of the establishment of those kinds of things in this country. Okay.
Cool. Then that's what I want to talk about. First, that definitely dovetails with what I was about to say. Okay. So we are waging kinetic military action peace, I guess, on, let's see, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Yemen, Pakistan, and Somalia, right?
And not to mention 50,000 troops that are still sitting in Germany for some reason, and another 50,000 in Korea.
Okay, so they're ready to wage some peace at any time.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so they are in a peaceful posture. Meanwhile, we are actively, kinetically militarizing some peace in those 6 places. So, I just wonder why that's not like a bigger deal. And but go on. You were saying, give it to me. I mean, spank me hard.
No, it's just someone like Ron Paul. It really stinks because there's not really a counterpart in the Democratic Party outside of like maybe Dennis Kucinich in the House and Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, I really like Dennis Kucinich.
Yeah, Dennis Kucinich is great. Bernie Sanders is probably my favorite, and I actually really like Anthony Weiner. And it's a shame he had to go because of his wiener. But
yeah, I liked Anthony Weiner too.
And where were we going with? Oh yeah, that's right, Ron Paul.
Yeah.
When as far as civil rights, his view on drug policy, I think, is absolutely spot on.
Yeah, me too.
And actually, I'm not a violent person. I'm not a gun owner, but I haven't really looked at guns as really the source of the problem of violence in this country.
No, me neither.
But the kind of policies Ron Paul advocates, it's seriously closer to a form of anarchy than any sort of governance. And I don't know if you've looked at his laundry list of government departments that he would eliminate, but he'd essentially eliminate everything. And I just don't agree with that outlook on government. I don't look at government as the enemy. I look at bad government as the enemy, which is what we have now. Yeah. But I don't think government in and of itself is evil or wrong, and he does hold that opinion.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, well, then I guess I'm not, that makes sense, and it's nothing shocking. It's no like big revelation that you would disagree with that because, you are a self-admitted like socialist, right? Yeah. So, and for that to basically occur, you need an infrastructure, you need a government, in which, by definition, to provide those things. But the thing is that what you have to keep in mind is that what we're really talking about is a federal agencies being, not existing anymore. We're talking about a big bloated federal takeover of things that were of responsibilities that were never really afforded to the federal government to begin with. You know what I mean? That they've just sort of taken control over through things like entitlement programs. That's really where it comes from, and I think he's spot on. I think the philosophy is appropriate because You can't just come in and start demanding that the federal government, have this power and this power and that power. You have to first entice people by saying, well, people deserve this and people deserve that. And then you provide those things, and then through doing it, then you set a precedent for the federal government to then have that power. So that's sort of my take on the whole thing, and I believe that's the philosophy. I mean, that's the belief, and I do believe that. So the thing is I don't think that Ron Paul necessarily, although I don't want to speak for him. And you'll also notice that in that message, when I put that up, what did I say? I said that I feel as though maybe I should have been promoting Ron Paul for the past 2 years, but I haven't. And the reason is, well, I guess I don't really have a reason. You know what I mean? Rather than vote for someone or tell someone to vote for someone who holds these principles, I just hold them. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm not really a big Ron Paul supporter or an anyone's supporter. And that's my big problem with the presidential campaign, which led to the election of Barack Obama. We have to be the change that we want to see within the world, not vote for the guy to be the change for us. And that's where we're at. It's very fortunate that election woke a lot of people up and really mobilized people, because I don't believe Barack Obama won because he was black. Not really. I think that was a factor, and maybe it was like a tipping point, but that's not what the main factor which got him into the White House. And I think you'd be kind of hard-pressed to find someone who doesn't support him who will take that stance. Most people would be like, oh, he's only there because he's black. No, he's not. He's there because people wanted change. You know what I mean? But that's good, all right? It's good that people are mobilized and wanting change, but now we just need to get people realizing that they can't subcontract out the responsibility for that change. We, the people, have to be the change. We're the problem. You know what I mean? We've got the government we deserve. Okay.
Hold on a second, because you're giving me a whole lot of points I want to speak on. Cool. Well, first let's backtrack to the Ron Paul conversation, because one of the things that you were talking about, the responsibility of government, when you were talking about, something gets provided to the population and then all of a sudden it's expected. The way I read the Constitution is there's definitely a lot of states' rights in there, but there's also the caveat about providing for the general welfare. And I think in that part there's certain essentials that the federal government should be responsible for, such as healthcare, and I'll tell you why. Because if you leave healthcare up to federalism, where it's a state issue, states especially most of them have balanced budget amendments. So when it comes to something like healthcare, I don't think you can leave that to the whims of how the economy of each individual state is doing, because then people, through no fault of their own, suffer just because of where they're living. So I do think that there is benefit to having the federal government have a very heavy hand in healthcare. So when, Obamacare, as people are calling it now, it's actually the, Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, was passed. A lot of people looked at it as a big victory, and I looked at it as a bunch of horseshit. Good. Because it basically just perpetuates the problem, and in fact federally subsidizes what the problem is, which is the insurance industry. Yep. We shouldn't have an insurance industry for something that people are going to always need. That's absolutely ludicrous, and I think it's just an absolutely heartless way to do things. Healthcare should not be a commodity. A commodity should be stuff that people choose to buy, like whether it's a car or a fucking bagel or something, but not something that every single person in this country is going to need at some point. So for something like that, I think it's absolutely the role of the federal government to guarantee it. And, I go as far as even say education should be nationalized, because I don't think that your education should be dictated by where you live. You're essentially punishing kids for the transgressions of their parents, even if you can even put transgressions on their parents, because more likely than not, if you're in a shitty school district, your parents are poor, and I'd be willing to bet that 99 times out of 100, those parents are poor too. They did not come from affluent families and somehow squander all their wealth and end up living in like the north end of Flint, for example, Right. So I do think that it is the role of the federal government to offer some assurances for certain things like that. Now, as far as the election of Obama, I think the biggest problem with that, Rob, was that people didn't really read up on him. You and I were talking about this the